Moses from Pharaoh's palace to the burning bush. God's people Israel were slaves in Egypt. They cried out to God for deliverance, and He heard them. He chose Moses to do this job. Here is the beginning of Moses' story from Exodus to 1:4. The story of Moses in Egypt began many years before he was born. Back then, a relative named Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt. After several years, Joseph gained favor with the Pharaoh and was made a powerful ruler next to Pharaoh in the command. Joseph's father Jacob and his family came to Egypt during a famine. They stayed there and prospered. Jacob's name had been changed to Israel. Genesis chapter 32:28. His family and their descendants became known as Israelites. They were also called Hebrews. After many years, Joseph and all his brothers died, but the Israelites continued to increase and grew great in number. They became very powerful throughout Egypt. Exodus chapter 1:6-7. Then there arose a new Pharaoh over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He told the Egyptians that the people of Israel were becoming too powerful. We need to do something so that they don't take over our land. So they made slaves of Israelites and worked them hard to build their buildings and cities. For many, many years, Israelites served as slaves and their lives became difficult and miserable. The birth of Moses. Even as slaves, the children of Israel still grew great in numbers. The more they were mistreated by the Egyptians, the more they multiplied. The Pharaoh came up with a plan to keep them from increasing. He gave a command that all sons born in Israelites be killed. Moses' parents already had a son, Aaron, and daughter Miriam. Before this command was given, soon the mother had another son. When she saw this beautiful baby, she hid him from about 3 months, a floating basket. When his mother could no longer hide him, she made a small basket from the grasses growing along the river. She sealed it with aspartate and pitch so it would float. Then she placed her baby into it and put it near the river's bank. His sister Miriam watched from a distance to see what would happen. Soon the Pharaoh's daughter came down to the river to bathe. Her maidservants were with her. She saw the basket floating near the river's bank and sent her maid to get it. As she opened it, she saw the baby. The baby began crying. She felt sorry for the baby and knew he was a Hebrew babe, a child. Miriam came to her and asked, "Should I find someone from among the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter told her to go and find such a woman. Miriam returned to her mother and told her what had happened. She came quickly. Pharaoh's daughter said, "Take this child and nurse him for me and I will pay you." Moses' mother gladly took the baby, her son, home and nursed him. Raised by the Pharaoh's daughter, the child grew, and when he was old enough to be weaned from his mother, she brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter. He became the son of Pharaoh's daughter. She called his name Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." So Moses was born to a Hebrew woman, but raised by Pharaoh's daughter. He had a good life and was well educated. He also knew his real family history and knew he was a Hebrew by birth. Visiting his people. When Moses was older, he went out one day and saw some Hebrew slaves working. As he watched, he thought about how hard they had to work. Then he saw an Egyptian beating one of them. Moses became angry and looked around to see if anyone was watching them. He killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. When Pharaoh heard about this, he wanted Moses to be killed. Moses feared for his life. He ran away to the land called Midian. In Midian, he met and married a woman called Pharorah, and they had 2 sons. He spent many years working for her father, taking care of his sheep. The burning bush. One day Moses was tending his father-in-law sheep near Mount Hebor. Suddenly he saw a burning bush. He was surprised. The bush was on fire, but was not being burned up. He asked himself, "Why isn't this bush burning up?" Just then a voice came from the bush saying, "Moses, take off your sandals. You're staying on holy ground. You're standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have seen the mystery of my people, the misery of my people in Egypt, and heard their cries. I will bring them out of slavery from the Egyptians and bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey. I will send you to Pharaoh so that you may lead my people out of Egypt. Pharaoh will not let them go, but I will strike Egypt with my wonders, and after that he will let my people go." Moses asked, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" God answered, "I will be with you." Then Moses said, "But when I come to the children of Israel and say, 'The God of your fathers has sent me,' they will ask me your name. What shall I tell them?" And God said, "I am who I am." And he said, "You shall say to the children of Israel, 'I am has sent me.' Go to Egypt and gather the elders of Israel together. Say to them, 'The Lord God of fathers appeared to me, saying, I have seen what is being done to my people in Egypt. Then go to Pharaoh of Egypt and say to him, the Lord God of Hebrews has met with us. And now please let us travel 3 days into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to our God. Pharaoh will not let you go, but after I do my wonders, then he will let you go." Moses told God, "The elders may not believe me, or they may say that you have not appeared to me." God said, "What is in your hand?" Moses answered, "A rod." God said, "Throw it on the ground." So he threw it on the ground, and it became a snake. Moses was afraid and ran away. Then God said, "Grab it by the tail." Moses came back and reached out his hand and caught it. It became a rod again. "But this sign the elders will know that I have appeared to you," God said. "If they don't believe you, I will give you other signs that will cause them to believe you." More excuses. Moses still did not want to return to Egypt. He was trying to find a reason not to go. He said to God, "I don't speak well." Then God said, "I will teach you what to say." Moses said, "Please send someone else." Then God became angry with Moses. He said, "Aaron, your brother, speaks well. Now you will speak to him and tell him what to say." Moses finally realized that he was going to have to obey God and go back to Egypt. God had chosen him. This was the reason Moses had been saved from being killed as a baby. God was going to use Moses to help deliver the Israelites from slavery. Back to Egypt, he returned to his father-in-law and said, "Please let me return to my family in Egypt." And sees whether they are still alive. He told Moses, "Go in peace." Then Moses took his wife and his sons and set them on a donkey. Moses took the rod of God in his hand. They began the long journey back to Egypt. Questions. Here are some questions to think about or talk about as a family. 1. Do you think it may have seemed strange to Moses to know he had a Hebrew slave family while he was being raised in the royal household of the Pharaoh of Egypt? If you were Moses, would you have wanted to know your parents, sisters, and brothers? 3. Why do you think Moses got angry when he saw one of the Hebrew slaves being beaten? 4. Would you have been surprised to see a bush burning without being burned up? Would you have been surprised to hear a voice coming from a bush? 5. Would you like to have a stick that would turn into a snake when thrown down? Would you be afraid of it? Do you think this was a miracle? 6. Why was Moses afraid to return to Egypt? 7. Should we always obey God no matter what he asks us to do?